Okay, so I've collected my tinder. The next thing I'm going to want to be focusing on is getting my kindling. Kindling is the wood that you're going to use to bring the fire up from the smaller tinder to larger, less combustible woods. You're mainly going to want to use small, dry twigs. Big mistake that people do is, oh, the fire's going here. All right, let's throw a log on. Okay, you know, you need to burn. You need to burn slowly and work up to the larger, less combustible log. So the best way to do that is to use small, dry twigs and sticks that you can find laying around. They're all over the place, even though, again, it is cold outside. The best kind of twigs, if you can find them, are going to be conifers or basically evergreens. You know, spruce, hemlock, things like that, firs, pine. You know, there is a downside to that, is they do burn quickly and they can spark a lot. Because they burn quickly, you're going to need to get a lot of them to keep the fire going. I always like to say that collecting firewood is like foreplay. When you think she's ready, go about 15 more minutes. So you're going to want to get as much wood as you possibly can for that. If, you know, and we're going to get to the main fuel source here, but if your main fuel source is conifers, you're going to want to make sure you get even more than you think is necessary, because it will burn fast, it does spark, it does lose heat quickly as opposed to an angiosperm, but that's getting a little bit more in towards the fuel. So we're going to talk about that in a second. So let's go try to find some kindling. So I'm working on collecting more kindling, smaller wood, larger than tinder, that will bring the flame up to larger, less combustible woods. And I mean, this kind of area right here is really a jackpot for this. All this brush in here, you can see most of it is dead. Now, you're not going to want to go for these larger pieces because they are going to carry moisture. But the deeper you get in here, this inner stuff, and it's all in the crack, you can hear it, but this is all dry. All this stuff is going to be dry, because what happens is, you know, the snow comes down and it basically just goes right through, or it doesn't even get really to the bottom that thickly, because, you know, with the wind and everything going through here, it just doesn't have time to settle on here. And then the other factor is, as you can see, the sun is coming right down on this, so it doesn't give a chance for the snow to get into these little tiny twigs. So basically what you end up having here is a whole bunch of dry wood that is absolutely perfect for kindling. So I've been working on this already here, grabbing some more, and if you're not sure, again, you know, it's all in the snap. If it's brittle and it makes a nice crack noise, you know it's dry all the way through, and you know it's going to work well for you as your tinder. As your kindling. So, starting to work on that. You know, I've got a couple handfuls already there. Probably get one or two more. Again, I'm not building a huge fire, so don't need to take too much. But just for the purposes of showing you, I wanted to show you where I was getting from. So I did say earlier that the kit is really the smallest part towards what you need to survive. But if you do have it, it certainly does help if you know what you're doing. Here is Trailblazer's Sawviver saw. Folds down into a very nice little saw here. Very simple to put together. The blade goes through this main shaft here. You just can screw it in, and then you simply attach it onto the handles here, and then on the handle end there is a tightening screw which moves the attachment point farther away, which basically serves to lock the blade in place sturdily so that you can use it to saw wood. So this is going to be a big help for me if I do find a larger piece of fallen deadwood that hasn't fallen completely, so that I can cut part of it down and use the remainder that's fallen onto the ground. And the way I will most likely use that if I don't use my saw, again, another advantageous part to have in your kit is a woods knife, survival knife. This is the RTAC 2. Now, a lot of separate review coming on this, but this is a great knife. You can see it's been beat to hell, and there's a reason for that. I don't go more than 15 yards into the woods without this thing. I've had this for over a year. I use it extensively, and it looks the part, but it is a great knife. Now, I've never had this sharpened professionally. I don't even know if I've ever used a whetstone on it, actually. But it's going to do the job and then some today. I'm going to show you that shortly. So, you know, again, the kit is the smallest part, but if you have it with you, or you know, you have an emergency kit in your car or something like that, and you can get to that if you are in an emergency situation, survival situation. Let's say you are on the road and car breaks down. If you have something like this in your car, it's going to make your stay in the woods a lot more manageable. So, okay, so I've got a decent amount of kindling just from the little thick areas of brush where a lot of dead twigs have fallen in, and just the plant itself actually died, so there was more than enough kindling around, and there is, you know, you just have to know where to look. So the next source, well, the next type of wood that we're looking for is fuel, hence the word fuel. It's, you know, it's the heavier wood that we're going to be using to make the fire really hot and burn really strong. At first, you're only going to want to start with dry wood. And again, you're going to want to take these larger pieces of wood and cut them down smaller and gradually work up to full logs. I'm going to show you how to do that once I find a good piece of standing dead wood or something that's fallen that hasn't quite hit the ground yet. Plenty of opportunities to find those. With so many trees around, a dead tree falls, another tree blocks it from landing onto the ground and prevents the setting in of dampness from the earth and from precipitation. So I'm going to show you the technique on how to do that. But when you're looking for, again, fuel, you're going to want to start with only dry woods. Now, as you burn the fire, you can gradually start to add greener or greener wood, you know, so I don't like to say still living, but if you have to, you have to. You know, you're out in the woods, you got to do what you got to do. But you can use greener wood, and you can start to dry out wood that is damp. You know, if you're in a situation where you can't find a lot of wood that is dry for whatever reason, maybe it's rain instead of snow, that makes it a little bit more difficult. Maybe it's rain instead of snow, that makes it a little bit more difficult. You know, you can start to use that greener wood. As a general rule, the heavier the piece of wood is, the more heat it's going to give off. This applies to green and dry wood. So, you know, when you're looking for really hot fires, you know, you want to look for heavier pieces of wood. Hardwoods are usually, I shouldn't say usually, hardwoods are the best way to go, also known as angiosperms. So things like, I don't know if there's really too many around here. Yeah, there is a decent amount. But if you're looking for like hickory and beech and things like that, oak, those are angiosperms that are going to do well for producing heat. They make really hot coals, they burn slower, they last longer, they don't spark. So those, if you have a choice between that and conifers like we talked earlier, like pines, firs, things like that, you know, stay away from those. And for your fuel source, try to opt for hardwoods. So we're gonna get ourselves together here, and I'm gonna try to find some nice standing or fallen partially dead wood and see if we can cut some out for you. So here I did find a decent piece, large enough for the purposes of this video, of wood. And it does have a little bit of snow on the outside of it, but I did cut through a piece of it already, and it is dry, dry enough anyway. So this is what we're going to use. Now, because I don't have a much leverage on this, I'm going to use the saw for cutting this part. And then one of these little branches over here, I'm going to demonstrate the RTAC's ability to cut. So let's go ahead with the saw here. There, so you saw how easy that was. Very quickly cut right through that log, probably a couple inches. Another thing to keep in mind when you're out here in the woods is conserving energy. Using your saw is going to be a lot easier than hacking away with the RTAC. Even though this knife and knives like it are very good at what they do, so you're always going to be better off using the saw over the knife, because you're going to hacking away at the wood, you're going to exert a lot more energy. So